This Tuesday is going to be Zayin Adar, the seventh day of the month of Adar, and it's the birthday and the yahrzeit, the day of ascent of the greatest prophet to ever walk the face of the planet, Moses, our teacher, peace be on him. And it's a day that's really a turning point in Jewish history, and also in world history. Moses, even if you would say that the other two major religions that consider themselves to be monotheistic had their main prophets, you'll see that if you were to stop and compare and contrast, there's really no comparison. Moses is a man that God waited, kind of kept his eye until he was 80 years old before really calling him to prophecy. And his role was to take a nation of about 3 million people and to guide them and to direct them from a state of servitude, of being slaves, to being a nation of priests. It says, "You will be unto me a nation of priests." And he bore the children of Israel for 40 years in the desert. The defining moment of his life was, of course, when God had told him, after he had instructed them on two simple things of "I am the God who took you out of Egypt, and you should have no other gods before me." During his 40-day time in seclusion with God, at the end, God reveals to him that the children of Israel had in fact done the thing which God had told them not to do, by making a idol of gold and prostrating to it, dancing around it. And God says, remove yourself from their midst, and I will make of you an entire nation. And God seems to be ready to just start over with just the seed, the holy seed of Moses. And Moses says, if that's the case, erase me from your book as well. I don't want any part of this plan of yours. And he says, he mentions two things. One, why should the Egyptians say God took them out just to kill them? And two, what about what you promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that you have this eternal promise, a three-bound promise of three distinct individuals who all served you with a pure heart, with unquestioned motives, and why should now you renege on the promise to them? This is in contrast to two also great men who came before him. One was Noah, in the time of the flood, where God told him he was going to destroy the world, and Noah didn't really protest. He just kind of listened to the commandment to make an ark. And then even Abraham, the first Jew, by some accounts, or his son Isaac, but either way, the first monotheist, let's say, in that respect, was told that God's going to destroy the city of Sodom and two wicked cities, and God and he starts the bargain. He says, "What if there's righteous men in the city?" And he says, "If there's 50 righteous men, 45, 40, and he gets down, even if there's 10 righteous men, please don't destroy them, because will you kill the wicked and the good together?" And this we see the first time when really someone takes a role, a counter to God, and it kind of argues with God. And this is done by Abraham, but in the end, God doesn't find even 10 people, and he does destroy those two cities. But Moses has a different approach altogether and says simply, "I am my people, and if you destroy them, you're in fact destroying me, and I'll have no part in this." In this week's Parsha, it usually falls out during his yahrzeit, which is Tetzaveh. It's the only Parsha where Moses' name isn't mentioned, and one explanation is God honored the request of "take me out of this book." So when Ezra was dividing the Parshas, we have a Parsha where there's literally no mention. The only time since Moses is born, the only Parsha you'll find that his name is not mentioned even once. But the experience of having Moses on planet Earth was something that, in the Messianic redemption, we don't know, probably will be similar things, but it was really the ability to talk to God. And Moses had this capacity at all times and all places. He says that Moses would speak to God like a person speaks to his friend. And this was something that God didn't give to basically anyone ever again. Like the Torah itself says that there never arose in Israel a prophet like Moses, someone who had such a clear vision and clear understanding of what God wanted. And notwithstanding this, his characteristic that he's noted for is that of humility. And if you would think of all the things to make a person lose sense of humility, would be this ability to communicate with God. Surely if God has chosen you to speak to you, to communicate to you directly, there'd be room for you to lose the sense of humility. But Moses, and again the Torah itself testifies that the man Moses was the most humble on the face of the planet. And this is something which is amazing to consider. There's even one time when there's a certain case of Jewish law before him and his brother Aaron, and Moses is a certain way, and Aaron corrects him, and Moses accepts his correction. Here we have someone who has a clear path to divinity, unparalleled in the entire generation and in the entire history of creation. But when he sees that he made a mistake, he erred, he doesn't retort, he doesn't say back, he just admits that he's wrong. He's quiet about it. Again, showing in his great humility. Zayin Adar is a unique day because it's his birthday as well as his day of ascent. This is why, in the story of Purim, when Haman saw that he was looking for a month to try to curse the Jews and to annihilate them, he chose Adar because he saw the only thing that happened up until that point was the death of Moses. But you know that Moses was also born on that day. Moses' day of birth was a day of great delight in the heavenly, in the earthly spheres. It was a day when the entire house he was born in was filled with light, and this was the day, the beginning of the salvation of the Jewish people from their bondage in Egypt. But the beauty of Zayin Adar is that Moses had sought the care of his people even after Zayin Adar, even after he physically departed from this world, through anointing publicly his successor Yoshua ben Nun. And this was someone who was with him always by his tent, and someone he took up to the mountain and he anointed him in the eyes of the people. So this was how the Torah was able to be continued. The beauty of the Torah is that it's not a document that was written and it's just there. It's a living, breathing document. It's a living, breathing way to connect to godliness at all times and all places. This is why, and really this whole concept, the beginning of it comes from his father-in-law Yisro, who at one point tells him, you should, it's too much. You're taking all these little cases. Why don't you anoint other people? And Moses does anoint 70 elders and give them the same spirit that you have on them in a smaller way. And when you give someone over your spirit, it doesn't really take away. It's like a candle. It lights another candle. The initial candle isn't diminished. And Moses was able to do 70 elders that he sought as most qualified. And from this, Torah continued. And even when Moses passed away, they have a new leader, Yoshua. And in every generation, God provides for the Jewish people a leader that if they want, they can turn to, and they can really see and figure out what God is wanting from them. And even with the 70 elders, they have the ability to interpret what the Torah would say in a certain case. And this is the beauty of the Torah, that it's not dependent on a man. It's dependent on the fact that it's eternal and timeless, and that it affects all places and all times equally. And if you have the ability to look into the Torah and see what the Torah would dictate in a certain circumstance and how it would affect your current reality, you're able to tap into divinity at all times in all places. And this is the beauty of the Torah, is that it's something that has a life of its own, and something that the reason it's eternal is because it affects life forever and ever. It's a timeless wisdom. It's a timeless connection. It's a timeless bridge to the supernal worlds, so that we as earthly finite beings, through our God-granted intellect, have the ability to decipher what is wanted, what is demanded of us from above. And this is why Judaism has lasted for 3,320 years since the giving of the Torah, and why it will literally last till the end of days, and then after that in the way that the world exists. There's nothing holding down the Torah, and there's nothing forcing it into one small sector of your life. It's something that affects everything equally. So it's an auspicious day. It falls out this year on Tuesday, which will be March 3rd. And it's a day to really connect to the leader of the generation, and also connect to the Torah. And to know that Moses served perfectly for 120 years. This was the longest that, even though the other, I don't think they lived 120 years, but Moses' service was perfect. And his self-sacrifice was on the highest level. And at the same time, his humility was also on the highest level. And we could learn a lot just by seeing his life and seeing how he bore the children of Israel, who were filled with complaints in the days of the desert about not having meat, about watermelons and leeks and onions, and they missed all these simple physical pleasures in Egypt. Moses is trying to teach them about the world to come and how to be godly creatures and things like this. But he was forever patient. His wrath only becomes aroused when actually God's wrath is aroused, and rightfully so. But encourage everyone to use this day to tune into it, and to make the most of it, and to focus on the fact that the Torah of Moses is the eternal heritage of all the sons of Israel. And thank God at one point they started writing down the Torah, even the oral Torah, in the way of the Talmud and the Code of Jewish Law and all the commentaries that come afterwards. And we all have a portion in this, and we're all free to learn it. Every single Jewish man, woman, and child. And it'll affect us all forever and ever. And the more you learn, the greater your merit is. You're tuning into godly thoughts and what God Himself thinks about, as it were. Someone once said, wouldn't it be a great honor to hang out with Einstein and just to see what he thinks about? So when you open the Torah, you're seeing what God thinks about. And there's really nothing as honorable, desirable as that in this world if you really stop and think about why you're here and what you're doing here. God has given you access to His thoughts, as it were. And He's enclosed it in the Torah and its commentaries. But it's accessible to all. So I encourage you to tap into this special day. Thank you so much, and God bless.